Hello Internet, this is as always Dakian, welcoming you to another one of my rambling digressions about miniature paintings. And this one is for Monday the 15th of July 2019. What do we have here? Well, I'm going to start off with the metal minis I painted. There's only 3 of them, the rest are plastic, all bones, you know. And I've done the 2 Discworld minis. As I said, I don't really know these characters, haven't read the books they're in, but I have replicated the color schemes, I think, of them. The black is, well, my friends say it's very effective, and though it's subtle, it's very sparsely highlighted, and then I've used a satin varnish as a finish to give it a little bit of sheen, and that gives it some actual highlights created by light. And here's the little dwarf musketeer, or whatever he is. I love his expression. This was a fun guy to paint. And oops. Anyway, pretty dark on the back, but that's because he's leaning backwards and it would be in shadow. You wouldn't see very much of it. So, but on the front he's somewhat brighter. And then I have finished the first of the Dark Sword minis from Just a Rich Painting DVDs tutorials. This is Shay from George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. And the interesting thing here that I worked on was the sheer cloth technique. Hopefully you can see here. I'm not sure in this light, you'll probably see it in the light box later, that you can see some of her skin showing through in the recesses where the cloth would cling closest to her body. And there was some glazing involved in there, and there was some subtle skin tone work and black hair, and the eyes and the mouth. The face is not as good as Jess did it, of course. I'm not that skilled, I don't have that time and that patience. Especially the eyes, a little wonky if you look too closely. But, you know, at a normal distance with just naked eye observation, it's good enough. And I think, and the cloth effect does come across even to the naked eye. So I'm pleased with that. Now to lead us into the parade of bones, let's start with some monsters. These are the dire beasts. In the middle we have a dire boar, where I went with a something more sallow fur tone on the basic fur tone than I have done before on similar creatures. Just wanted to highlight the unnaturalness of it, and also contrast with the black stuff on top. I'm not really sure if these are supposed to be bone spikes or if it's just spikes of fur. The sculpt, or rather casting perhaps, is a little unclear, but I painted them like bone protrusions, well, because I thought that would look cooler. And we have a great crocodile. It's a croc. What you gonna do? They look like they do. To make it a little bit more interesting, I went with sort of yellowish tone on the frills here. That's just to make it pop a little bit more. It's not naturalistic at all, but hey, this is a magical creature. What you gonna do? The crab. Went with the dark top of the shell and the lighter underbelly, so to speak, which is how crabs actually look in nature. And yeah, and the black tips on the claws, because I thought that would be interesting. From the villager set, first off, this little pig went to market. Literally, he's a pig pulling a cart. This doesn't really make any sense as far as how it's attached. It perhaps should be around his neck, but he can't go that far behind. I've seen someone else on the net who painted this as if this fold here on his neck was a collar. I don't think the sculpt bears that out, because if you look at it, follow it down below, it blends into his chin seamlessly. So I don't think that is a collar. I think that is just a fold of fat. I painted the spots just to make him not just pink, to be a little more interesting. And the cart is full of vegetables, pumpkins and other colorful stuff. And the bright colors to just to contrast the drabness of the old faded wood of the cart itself. And then we have the ladies. These are all the female figures from the villager set in the Bones 4 Kickstarter core set. Here we have a waitress. And yeah, possibly the least interesting one I painted. I did not pop up the contrast of her dress very much compared to some of the others. Like this milkmaid, for instance, is more contrasty, even though, well, she starts from a darker base with the violet dress. So who knows? Here we have a lady who's perhaps leading an angry mob with a flaming torch, and I forget what this is called. It's called I forgot the English word for it. Oh well, never mind. It'll come to me later. And yeah, I went for more subdued colors on her, as compared to this perhaps a bit more upper class lady in the hot pink. Where again I pushed the contrast quite a lot. And I went with the pink also on this dancing girl, though a more pastel, a paler pink, as you can see. Originally I was going to go for a sheer effect on her dress, similar to what I did on Shay. But yeah, it didn't want to work with me. The model sort of resisted me somehow. So I settled for making the dress a color that's kind of close to a flesh color to, you know, just kind of sell the illusion that she's almost naked. But in order to make it not, in order to give the game away, so to speak, so the viewer can actually see that it's not see-through, I made her a darker skin tone. She's more tan. And if she'd been really pale and had this pink dress, it would have looked like she was naked. And the blue on the, I thought it was a nice contrast. Huh. I'm pleased with how these turned out. There's some of the better civilians I've painted recently, I think. And in the final batch of stuff I'm going to show you painted this week. It's another week with a lot of accomplishments, a total of 21 minis. We have the rest of the villagers. Here we have all the male villagers. They are not quite as colorful, not all of them anyway. A little bit more drab, more naturalistic colors, more working class outfits. We have some carrying a barrel with mallets for some reason. Maybe he's gonna use it to open a barrel. Oh, here we have a beggar. You'll recognize him. I painted him in metal. He was part of the Metal Villagers box set. And I think this guy was in that set as well. Sort of farmer with a hoe, I think it's called, or a rake. I mentioned no. A rake has it's more like a fork. This is a hoe. And then we have a bunch of like armed thugs or mercenaries of some sort. One with a huge axe, One with a big mace. And one with a big dagger, or maybe a short sword. Not sure. And he's got a cod piece as well. Just point that out. Then we have a couple of more academic characters, and they have brighter colors. We have this monk who's not a poor monk, not a poor friar. He's more well-to-do, so he has got some nice clothing in bright colors. And this scribe is also sort of making a fashion statement with his kind of hot pink cloak. Kind of interesting looking. And yeah, just quickly slapped together, as always, speed painted bones. And yeah, big batch of finished stuff. So let's move on to works in progress and upcoming projects.
Well, here's a lot of unpainted stuff. We have the two Mink Studio models, the Barbarian and the Paladin, which I painted the skin and the hair on, and not much else. I think there's a base coat on the metals on this guy. And yeah, let's put them aside for a while. And let's talk about the Dark Sword minis and how far I've gotten. I still haven't reassembled the Dark Elf, but I thought I would show you what I've done. I've done all the skin tones now and the hair colors on all of them. See here, skin, face. Not as detailed and accurate as Jess does on the DVD, of course, because my eyes are not as good as hers and my hand is not as steady. But it's sort of there in the ballpark. So let's have a look at the contents sheet here. What have I done? I have gone through all of disc 1 and all of disc 2. Let's see what's left to do. Okay, so on disc 3 it starts out with, this is on focus. Okay, the Dark Elf skin tones and faces. Right, that's the Dark Elf, that's the flying figure. Difficult colors, painting black. Painting black is the clothing on this figure. All of it is painted as black leather. While painting red, that's the dress on this lady. So that's up next. Critter fur and critter eyes and wood grain are all the ranger, rabbit ranger. The fur and the eyes, of course, and the grain is simulated wood grain. It's painting in little stripes of different colors to make it look like this smooth surface on the bow actually has some grain in it. Interesting technique, which I've never done actually. So it'd be interesting to try that out. And painting feathers is, of course, the wings on the Dark Elf, as is the NMM gold armor. So again, saving that for last. The sheer fabric I've done, that was on Shay. The steel sword and the blood and gore are this figure again. She paints the swords as NMM and then adds some blood effects to the tip here. Dingy and weathered clothes is the cloak on Arston, Whitebeard. Is shown as being weathered at the bottom. Flames and fire. I've watched this and it is a standard tutorial. It's just the basic fire technique, going from white to the base to red at the tips. The only special thing about it is that the actual model she demonstrates on, which I don't have, has it's carrying a torch and it has flames that are sculpted very smooth. It's not the usual. 99% of all flames you see people sculpt are sharp. They have very sharp ridges, and it's just easy to sort of side brush on the highlights or lowlights, as it may be. This one required a lot more careful blending, but essentially it's just layering glazes. I mean, I've been there, done that. I understand the process. Painting gems is also demonstrated on a model that I don't have. That was not included in the kit when you bought the DVD plus minis. So I'll have to look around and see if I find something else in my collection with a big gem I can do. OSL and a magic sword. This is Arston again. Oops. He doesn't really have a magic sword in the books, but she's painted this model up as having sort of a glowing sword, and it casts a bit of light on his arm and head. So we'll try that. Painting with a limited color palette. It's this model. You thought I'd forgotten about her. She's painted up all in... The dress is in several different parts, and it's painted in colors that are close to each other. Instead of being contrasting colors, she chooses to paint tone in tone, very, very close colors, which is an interesting effect. And then there's a lot of stuff I'm not going to do. There's 4 freehand sections, and I'm just going to give those a miss because I don't have the time or patience for that stuff. I don't think it's necessary. As for sealers and basing, I know this stuff already. I could rewatch it, I suppose, and there's a gallery and stuff. So essentially, disc 6, I'm skipping completely. I'm not doing anything about that, and I'm only doing like half of disc 5. So, yeah, like 2.5 discs left to go. It's doable. Won't be able to do everything until next week, but I'm gonna start here with the black and the red with these 2 minis, I think, painting their clothing, and well, we'll just see how far I get. And this is the primed and ready section. We have the 2 smaller minis. Well, relatively speaking, these turned out to be 35mm scale actually, so they're a lot taller than my normal, 28mm minis that I paint. And it turns out only one of them is actually in actual military gear, wearing what seems like a uniform, jacket and so forth. This girl has a bare midriff. She's got booty shorts, some sort of halter top, and combat boots. So very irregular troops. Anyway, in the back we have some of these Reaper Bones monsters, humanoid monsters. Have some more or less armor than others, and they were, a lot of these needed assembly. Not this guy and not this guy, but the others did. But it was no problem at all. It fit perfectly, and there was a bare minimum of gap filling needed. Don't know if you can even tell. Like for instance, here the joint his right arm. I think I smoothed that over pretty well. And yeah, this might seem like not very much to add to my pile, but I have these big projects. I still have the Falcon to work on, and I still have all those Dark Sword minis that require a lot of patient painting, and also a lot of time spent watching the DVDs again. So if I have any time left over after these guys are finished, I can just do more work on the Dark Sword figures. I don't think I'll be lacking for work. Anyway, let's see if we have something else here. Well, since there's nothing in the old mailbox this week, let's just have a look at what I am planning on prepping next. And I mentioned something about gems, didn't I? And
this little model here has a lot of gems on his belt. And there's one in a sort of talisman around his neck as well, but that's kind of small. I'm not sure I can paint a gemstone effect on that. So this model does not come with a lot of choices. There's only one head and one right hand, but there is a choice of an axe and a sword, and I think you'll agree that the axe is cooler, so we'll go with that. This is a miniature from Heresy Miniatures. It is, you can perhaps read it there, it says Heresy there on the tab. It says Big Boris here, because Big Boris is Heresy Miniatures' sort of flagship character that they've made in a lot of different versions. This is, I believe this is the oldest one, the Mark I Big Boris as it's called. And so this is going to be my, well, one of my projects for next week's store painting session. The other project is another Heresy mini or two that I've unearthed from my vaults. It is the Dwarf Miner / Inventor. It comes with a lot of different pieces. So there's two bodies, which are identical. There's two heads, which are different. I'll have to use one for each body. There's a backpack. And then there's a lot of different arms with different weapons or items. So here we have some long-barreled revolvers. Here's two different types of rifles. Here's a pick. And I'm not sure what he's holding in that left hand. Some sort of a mug, perhaps. So, a lot of different choices here. Different ways I can put these together, which I find fun. Now, for painting at home, of course, we have some bones. And first off, I decided to bite the bullet and just go for it. You know, best to get unpleasantness out of the way quickly. Of course, I'm not, because this is nowhere near the first project. But anyway, I decided I couldn't put it off any longer. These are the Pathfinder Iconics, the iconic player characters that were part of this Kickstarter. And there's, how many are there? 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10. Why am I hesitant to paint these? Well, because they are clogged with minute details that I'm not sure will come across well in the bones material. Also, the artwork for them, the official artwork in the Pathfinder books, is usually kind of on the dark side, which means the detail would be hard to see if I copy that exactly. So I'm going to have to take some artistic license and cheat a little bit to make them pop. Most of these are one piece. There's 4 that require some assembly. But, well, anyway, these are from the core set of the Bones 4 Kickstarter. Not from the core set, but from the add-ons is the set of trolls. So this is a bunch of different trolls of different sizes and shapes and just ideas. This is in fact not a troll but a dog that one of the trolls has as a pet. I believe this one is supposed to have it as a pet. This is the one that's the most like a classic D&D troll, I would say. And oh, this is the rock troll. This was a promo mini at one earlier this year, I think, for in Bones Black on the Reaper website. And some people, let's have a look at this. I haven't actually opened this before. Some people complained about the fit. There were some examples that did not assemble well. This comes pre-assembled, actually, from the factory. And I can't see any immediate errors. I mean, I need to fill these gaps with some putty, but otherwise, perfect. And here's the final one, which is, oh, it's a two-headed troll. Nice. Yeah. So that is the new projects I'm adding. Fewer than last time. Well, no, not as few as last time, but fewer than the time before that. But anyway, I think that time 2 weeks ago was very kind of biting off a bit more than I could chew. So I'm keeping it down to these I don't know, under 20 minis. Well, that was a lot of ground covered. The show is over for this week. I hope you click like and subscribe and comment and share. And of course, most of all, just join me here again next week. Same time, same channel. This is Dakian, signing off.